Good evening. We're continuing with our interviews of the flight control team here. The Orbit 3 team here in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room is on duty, and we're being joined by Ian Young, the prop officer for this team. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a bit about the prop position. What are you responsible for?
There's two systems we're responsible for. It's the OMS and the RCS system. OMS stands for Orbital Maneuvering System, and that's the two smaller rocket engines that we use once we get up on orbit to do rendezvous burns, orbit adjusts so that we can go rendezvous with the space station. And that's also the engines that we use for the deorbit burn to come home. And then the RCS system is the 44 attitude jets that keep us pointed in the right direction. And we'll use those also for smaller burns. Sometimes we'll use them to reboost the space station. And so we're in charge of the 44 jets, the hardware that goes along with that, the two OMS engines, the propellant tanks, the propellant budget, the piping, the heaters, and so everything that kind of goes along with that.
Sounds like quite a bit. When does your work for a mission start? Are you about a year ahead or more than that?
For the leads, yeah, we'll typically start out, you'll get assigned a lead somewhere around 10 to 12 months beforehand to start following the missions. We have a bit of prep time of prep prior to a flight, and that's really the last couple months is when we do a lot of our work. We have some flight design folks that do the long lead part that kind of get us an initial budget, a propellant budget, and then once we get closer to flight, we have our propellant budget that we put together. That's a little bit finer than they have to make certain assumptions early on, and so then we come in and take their assumptions and refine it a little bit.
So, and really, it sounds like the prop role is fairly active throughout the whole mission.
It is up until, in all honesty, once we get docked, it's a little bit quiet for us. We hand over attitude control to the space station because they have control moment gyros that are non-propulsive. And so we save our propellant by letting them hold attitude. And so up through docking, we're always using our system. Once we get docked, it's fairly quiet, although we continue to replan. If we have to do a reboost, there's a limit on how much propellant we have on orbit, so we can only give them so much. So we work with folks like the FIDOs and the TOPOs in the space station room. And once we undock, then we get kind of busy again. We're getting ready for the fly around. We have to make sure we have enough propellant for that, and then planning for the deorbit burn.
Great. Tell us about your road to becoming a prop officer.
I got here, I studied aerospace engineering at Iowa State University. I graduated in December of 2000, and when I started for United Space Alliance, and they came and recruited at our job fair. And so I gave my resume. My boss gave me a call and invited me down for an interview. One of my areas of interest that I had put on my resume was propulsion. And so that got me in the door down here. And this is something I've always wanted to do since at least high school. And so pursuing an aerospace engineering degree was something I knew that would allow me to do this job. And so I just happened to get lucky, I think, with the timing of everything. So,
how many missions have you worked?
I think this is in the neighborhood. I'm not exactly sure. It's around 20 to 23, somewhere in there. So
that's quite a few.
It's not. It is all right. It's not quite as many as Lonnie. Our prop officer is now working his 100th mission, but yeah.
Tell us about the parts of the mission that you like the most.
The ascent is definitely by far the most dynamic, and so gearing up for those, is definitely the busiest or the most stressful. But and once we get on orbit, doing our OMS burns, those are a pretty big deal, and so we got to make sure that everything goes right on those, and then just working with the various teams, making sure we get all the mission objectives done.
And is there a part that you find is the most challenging?
And sometimes, throughout the mission, we'll get requirements that change. We'll be working towards one plan, and maybe something breaks. Maybe we get asked to do an item that wasn't necessarily on the plan, and so now we have to go. We had this plan that was all nice and laid out, and now we have to go and start back over the process and redo everything. But that's why we're here. So.
Seems like all these missions have some characteristics, some things that change throughout. What was it, as a youngster that kind of attracted you to that line of study? You said you were interested in a young age.
I'm not sure exactly what attracted me to NASA, but I'd probably credit my mom. She was a science teacher. And so I think that's what got me into the science, and I was always good at math. And so I enjoy engineering with the designing and figuring out those type of math problems. And so I think that's how I got interested in wanting to come to work for NASA.
It's great. And I'm sure you must be supported by some folks in back rooms. Tell us a little bit about those teams.
Yes, we have two positions in our back room that are there from ascent all the way through entry. So one's called OREO, stands for OHMS RCS Engineering Officer. And that person is in charge of the procedures, the hardware. And then we have a consumables officer. And that person is in charge of the propellant budget, making sure that we have enough propellant to do all of the items. We have a propellant timeline that we keep updated throughout the mission, and that's the consumables job.
Do you have any advice for other young students who might be having the same interest or, thinking about a job at NASA?
I say, pursue it, wholeheartedly. It's, you have to do what you love. And so if this is something you think you want to do, it's definitely math and science is the way to go. Engineering and studying hard, obviously, is always a key to that. So.
Did you have any roadblocks on your pursuit of this dream that,
No,
had to
I was
overcome?
actually fairly fortunate, and everything just happened to line up for me throughout my college career and then just getting here. So.
Well, it's great to have you as part of the team. I hope you're enjoying a successful mission. And a big day tomorrow with undocking.
That's right.
This is Ian Young, our prop officer for the Orbit 3 team here in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room.